In this video we look at percents, so this will be an introduction to percents. Percent basically means per 100, so out of 100. So for example, if we're looking at 25%, say, 25%, that just means it means 25 out of 100. And the reason why we might want to do this is that it's often easy to compare two things as percent. So for example, if we did a test and you got 25 out of 40 and you wanted to compare that to your second test where you got 45 out of 60, maybe you wanted to see which one you did better at. So that's percent's a good way to do that. So basically we can use percents to help us solve proportions, or we can solve percents type questions the same way that we solve proportions. So although this is kind of an introduction to percent, I want to show you how it's very similar to what we did when we talked about proportions. So here's an example. We've got our first example. John took 25 shots and scored 10 goals. Sarah, on the other hand, took 15 shots and scored 6 goals. The question here is which person has the better shooting percentage. So let's walk through this. We're going to figure out what each of their percentages are. So we start with John. So he scored 10 goals out of 25. So you can think of that almost like his test mark. He scored 10 out of 25 shots. So that's John's, maybe instead of an equal sign here, we'll just put a colon in. So that's John's performance. And we want to change this into a percentage so that we can compare it to Sarah's. So in order to do that, we're going to change this into a percentage. And remember, we talked already about percentages out of 100. So we know that this needs to be an equivalent fraction out of 100. If this is an equivalent fraction, then whatever we multiply or divide the denominator by, we have to do the same to the numerator. So in this case, what we want to do is we want to look at how do we go from 25 to 100. What do we need to multiply or divide by? Well, in the case of getting from 25 to 100, we need to multiply by 4. And if you're not sure how to get that, what we can do is just work backwards. Take the 100, maybe do this on the side of the page, take the 100 and divide it by 25, and that tells us what we needed to multiply 25 by to get 4. If we multiply the denominator by 4, what do we have to do to the numerator? Well, we need to do exactly the same thing. So 10 times 4 gives us 40. So that means that John's percentage is 40 out of 100, or what we call 40%. Let's do the same thing for Sarah now. So Sarah scored 6 goals out of 15 shots. So again, her score is 6 out of 15. We want to turn that into a percentage. So we're going to write that as a fraction with a denominator of 100. Now this one's a little trickier, but the same process has to happen here. Whatever we multiply or divide the numerator by, we need to do the same thing in the denominator. Sorry, whatever we multiply or divide the denominator by, we need to do the same thing in the numerator. So again, if you're not sure, and this one's less obvious, if you're not sure what we have to multiply 15 by to get 100, go backwards and do 100 divided by 15. And when we do that, we get 6.67. And that means that we needed to multiply by 6.67 in the denominator. So if we multiply by 6.67 in the denominator, we need to do the same thing in the numerator. So 6 times 6.67 works out to 40. So Sarah's score is 40 out of 100, which is the same as 40%. So it turns out that both John and Sarah had the same shooting percentage and scored 40% of the time. So that's how we can use percents to compare different values, and also here how we can use proportions to solve percent problems. So the percent problems don't have to look any different than the problems that we've done already. Let's move on to a second example. So here we have an example where TVs are on sale. The TVs are 25% off, And the question is, what is the discount on a TV that normally costs $885? So we know that the TVs are 25% off. I'm going to do this one two different ways so you can see both ways here. And I don't really care which way you do it. Just pick whichever way you're most comfortable with. So 25% means 25 out of 100. That's our discount, and we want to figure out how much money that is. Well, 100% of the cost of the television is $885. So we're going to have a proportion here. And again, we're going to do the same sort of thing that we did before. What do we have to multiply 100 by to get 885? If you're not sure, just on the side of your page in the margin or whatever, you can work backwards and say, well, what's 885 divided by 100? And that is equal to 885 divided by 100 is 8.85. Oh, there we go. That means that we needed to multiply the denominator by 8.85. So we need to do the same thing in the numerator. So we're going to multiply by 8.85 here. So 25 times 8.85 gives us $221, so $221.25. Alright, so that's the first way to do this, solving with a proportion. The second way that we can do this is what a lot of people would do is to first turn, so I'll write out the two steps here. There are two things that we need to do. So the first step is to turn 25%, into a decimal. And we do that by taking our 25 out of 100 and actually dividing the numerator by the denominator, which in this case will give us 0.25. So that was the first step. The second step is to take that decimal and multiply it by the number, in this case the cost of the television. So multiply the decimal by the cost. So in this case, our decimal is 0.25, and we're going to multiply that by 885. And no surprise here, we should get the same answer, 221.25. So remember, this is the discount. We should maybe write a little statement about that. I'll slide that in just down here maybe. So therefore, the discount is $221.25. Now this question didn't ask us to do this, but we should think about what is the cost of the television? Like, how do we find the cost of the TV after we get our discount? We know that our discount is $221.25. So the total cost then, that's how much we save. If the original cost was $885, we want to subtract our discount, which is $221.25, and that will give us the cost of the television, which works out to $663.75. So it's really important that you don't mix up the discount and the actual price that you're going to pay. I'm going to get you to try example number 3 here on your own. It's basically you're purchasing a CD for $18.99. The question is, how much tax would you pay? And in Ontario, we pay 13% tax. So really, what I want you to do is to figure out what 13% of $18.99 is. I want you to do that two ways. One, using a proportion like we did above, just so you can get the hang of it. I mean, you should already have the hang of the proportions because we've already done that. And number 2 is the percent method that we used up here. So using percents. And this one will be by proportions. So I'm going to let you work through that on your own and check to see if you get the right answer. I will tell you that the answer here is $2.47. So just work through the process just like we did in example number 2, and hopefully you get an answer of $2.47.